Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we have one of the new seven wonders of the world. We will be touring the Roman Colosseum, and I'm very excited. This tour will take us back to Italy. Last time we were up in Milan. Today we'll be down in the Eternal City, Rome. The Colosseum is the largest ancient amphitheater ever built and is still the largest in the world. Most of the stadiums that I cover on this channel are still in use. The Roman Colosseum is similar to the Panathenaic Stadium that I covered in Greece, where obviously no one is using this anymore. Every photo you see today was taken by me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and you can write in the comments section what you like about the Roman Colosseum. And with that, let's start the tour. The Colosseum was built back in 80 AD. They estimate the capacity to be somewhere between 50,000 to 80,000 seats. Walking around it, it definitely seemed like it could be closer to 80,000. The Coliseum absolutely blew me away. I was very impressed with how intact the arena actually still was, especially the interior. I was expecting, mostly be just an outer shell of the arena, and I was just blown away. So definitely check out the Roman Coliseum if you happen to go to Rome. When I went to Rome, it was the beginning of October, and it was still 90 degrees when we toured the Colosseum, and it was actually early on in the morning. So keep that in mind if you're planning a trip to go see the Colosseum, that it's definitely going to be very hot in the summertime. It's hard to tell when you check out the Roman Colosseum now, but back in the day, the Colosseum actually had four different sections of seating, and that was divided by, the different classes. Obviously, the higher class citizens were on the lower levels. Underneath the floor of the Colosseum, there's a series of tunnels that used to house the slaves and the animals, and I think this is just another incredible area that you should definitely check out if you go check out the Colosseum. This is a view walking through those tunnels under the Colosseum. When I went, it cost extra money if you wanted to take a tour down there, so keep that in mind. The cheaper option is just to walk around the upper portion of the Colosseum, but I would highly recommend coming down and looking at below the floor. I previously mentioned how impressed I was with how intact the Colosseum was. What truly blew my mind, though, and I think the most impressive part of the Colosseum, was just the brickwork throughout. This is a view still down in those tunnels, and you can see the brickwork. Absolutely incredible for the day. This is above ground in the Colosseum towards the entrance, and you can see the columns here, and even the columns have the brickwork. So wherever you go in the Colosseum, absolutely amazing brickwork. This photo really shows off an interior location of the Colosseum with the brickwork, so it's really showing off both things. And before I went to the Colosseum, I had no idea that this was even part of it. You could still see this, so just a little sneak peek behind what you'll see if you take a tour. I think out of all the incredible brickwork in the Colosseum, this has to be the most impressive room. I'll show you another photo in a second, really showing off the overhead condition. I just don't know how they did it. When I was in Charleston, South Carolina, I saw a very similar condition to this, and I was taking a tour there, and they were describing how the modern day contractors had a really hard time figuring out how they built that. And so for me, it's really incredible to see brickwork like this back in the Roman Colosseum, which is similar to brickwork in the, I think, 1700s in South Carolina. So I think just the history, is just incredible to see what they did back in the day. Moving on from the brickwork, I think we've fully covered that. If you look at this photo, you can see that this side of the Colosseum is actually shorter than the other side, and that's due to the fact that the Colosseum actually collapsed on one side after an earthquake in 1349. If we move outside and look at the exterior of the Colosseum, you can see that there's 3 levels of arches going all the way around. The Colosseum has to be one of the most recognizable structures in the world. I think everybody's seen it in a photograph or on TV, but I think it's hard to really truly grasp the scale of how big it is until you go there. And I have to say it is absolutely huge. It's not a small amphitheater that was an ancient, you can look and say it was big, but for ancient times, it's like, no, this arena was absolutely huge. With that being said, if you go look at the columns inside the Colosseum, you can see that they're absolutely huge as well. They were not really skimpy on the design, so everything about this Colosseum is massive. Something that's nice that they're doing right now is they're actually cleaning the Colosseum. You can see on the left side it's a lot more white than the right side. The right side is where they have not cleaned it yet. Where they have cleaned up the Colosseum, it's absolutely beautiful. This is an exterior shot. So I think that the fact that they can go in and clean it is a great thing they're doing. The Colosseum is made up of multiple layers, and this is a location where the Colosseum has collapsed on one side and is intact on the other, and you can really see those layers and walkways throughout. There's locations in the Coliseum where they've had to add things like this is new stairs right here. Obviously, you're not just walking on all the original Coliseum. So this is a location obviously added. So we'll show you a comparison in a minute of what's existing. This, in contrast, is where they've not added new stairs. So if they didn't go in and do some of these additions, this is a location where obviously you can't get up there. So this is a location where it used to be stairs that has, over the years eroded away or been chipped out or whatever. One of the nice new additions that they've added is the modern wood floor. You can see it on the right side here. This is looking on the underside of that wood floor. Obviously, they're not trying to do exactly what the ancient Colosseum was made up of. It's more practical, and it gives you an ability to go out and actually walk on a floor. Another thing to note is that new wood floor obviously doesn't cover the entire Coliseum, so they're not recreating that entire floor. They just have a small portion of it to give you the ability to go out on that floor and still look down and see all the system of tunnels underneath where the floor used to be. When you tour the Coliseum, you have the opportunity to walk out on that floor. Unfortunately, though, it's not the baseline tour package. You would have to pay extra money to actually go out there and walk on the floor, though. The package that I would recommend more than anything, though, is the package where you can go down on the floor, go underneath the floor, and then you also have the opportunity to see the Gladiator tunnels where the gladiators walked out. This is a view below the floor, and this is looking down one of those tunnels where the gladiators would be walking through. They actually had a gladiator school outside of the Colosseum that was across the street or whatever you want to call it. And this is a view looking at the tunnel that would take them from the gladiator school walking into the Colosseum. This is actually brand new as of 2023 for people to go actually tour. The Colosseum had an elevator system that would bring animals up to the floor, and below the floor you can see that they have holes in the ground that would be used to turn those mechanisms to bring the elevator up. This is just a close-up view of those holes. It was a little hard to see from the distance on the previous photo. Obviously, the original elevator systems are no longer there. They do have a replica. This is a view of one of those that you can come check out when you take a tour. Rome is the eternal city, and one reason for that is they have water that's underneath the city. And something I never knew before going to the Colosseum is there's actually water that's below the Colosseum. This is walking around the floor. You can still see some of that water today. When you look around the Colosseum today, there's no longer really any seats there, but you can still see where the seating used to be. You can see the different slopes of the different tiers, which is cool. There is one small section in the Colosseum on the lower level where they still have more or less intact where the seating used to be. The main structure of the Colosseum is made up of travertine stone with iron clamps within. You may have noticed in the other photos that there's a lot of holes throughout the Colosseum. The reason for that is there was iron within the Colosseum holding it together. People realized that, so they dug into the Colosseum and removed all the iron. They didn't always know where exactly it was, so they just dug holes all over the place trying to find it. This is a close-up view of the exterior architecture on the Colosseum. It's very beautiful. You see it all over the place. This is a great calendar shot or whatever, so definitely worth looking at. You can see the archways on the bottom of the screen. This is an entrance to the Colosseum. There was 80 total that wrapped all the way around the Colosseum. Each entrance had a number above it, and if you look close, you can still actually see the Roman numeral number for each gate entrance. The Roman Colosseum is located across from the Forum, in Rome, and you can see here that there's large crowds to get in. I would definitely recommend trying to get one of the passes that allow you to skip the lines. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting in long lines to get in. Given how large the Colosseum is, you can see it all over Rome. You can see here, just looking down a street through buildings, you can still see the Colosseum in the background. This is probably one of the cooler views looking down at the Colosseum. This is across the way in the Forum. I definitely recommend coming up here and getting a photo, or at least taking a look at it. At the bottom of the screen, you can see a lot of the brickwork, which I talked about earlier, and that is a view of the tunnels below the floor. And I'm going to take you down there and show you some more views walking through. Like I said before, this is not included in the basic package. So if you decide not to go walk down here, this still gives you an idea of what this area looks like. And if you can never obviously make it out to the Coliseum in person, you can see the tunnels, and I think it's a nice part of the arena. When I was walking through the tunnels, it just really seemed to be a maze of different corridors, and they had a guided tour that took you through so you wouldn't get lost. It would be cool to have a map, if there was a map out there laying out what the underground of the Colosseum looked like. This is a great view looking from the tunnel underneath the Colosseum floor all the way up to the very top of the Colosseum on the high side. Moving on from the underground portion, this is up on the upper level concourse. This is walking through. This is included in every tour package. I have been talking a lot about the different tour packages. I have no affiliation to the Coliseum. I'm just pointing it out because if you go there, I just want people to be aware that there are different options, and I don't want anybody to be disappointed because all they saw was one area and didn't realize that they had other package options. With that being said, this is a view. We were looking at the concourse a moment ago, walking around. This is a view looking out from that concourse at the Coliseum. From here, you can see down into the lower concourse on the collapse side. It's no longer covered, it's open air. And this is a view walking through that concourse. This is in contrast to the side that has not collapsed. That side, it's completely covered. And so just keep that in mind. There is different sides of the Colosseum. One is very intact. This side is mostly the shell, which I actually thought was going to be the case for the entire Colosseum before I showed up. Looking across the floor, straight across at the lower level, this is where the head of Rome would sit. Unfortunately, you cannot walk up to that seating. This is the stairway that would lead you up there, and you can see that it's eroded away, and they have not included new stairs yet. I've alluded to it, and I think it's pretty obvious. Most people know this, but technically have not said it yet on this video, but the Colosseum had gladiator fights, and they used to flood the floor and have sea battles here as well. What may not be so obvious to everyone, though, is the main character in the movie Gladiator. That was based on a real person. However, that person was dead before they ever built the Colosseum, so that character never actually fought in the Roman Colosseum. Gladiator fights were banned around 400 AD in Rome, and that really got rid of the need for the Colosseum. Through the medieval ages, the Colosseum was many different things. It was a cemetery, it was a castle, it was used for housing, but no longer gladiator fights. Over the years, a lot of things have happened to the Colosseum. There's been natural disasters, including earthquakes. Also, a lot of the stone was stripped from the Colosseum to build other things. This is a very common thing that happens with a lot of the ancient structures. Something that's no longer visible on the Colosseum is the Colosseum used to have poles on top for an awning, and these poles were placed on 240 corbels that went all the way around. For a little perspective on how tall the Colosseum is, the outer taller wall is 48 meters or 157 feet tall. You can go back and watch my San Siro video in Milan, Italy, and compare how tall that stadium was to the Colosseum. This is a view across from the Colosseum heading into the Forum. When I took a tour of the Colosseum, it was all one tour that included the Colosseum and the Forum. Every video I like to throw in a photo of myself at the venue. I do this just to show that I was actually there. This brings us towards the end of our tour. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. You can write in the comments section what stadium you want me to do a video on next. I hope you enjoyed this tour as much as I did, and take care until next time.